in the halls. I look around and I am appalled. The students do whatever they like. Where are the rules? They're nowhere in sight. What do? Come up with a plan. Who should we ask? Dr. Cullen. Applied behavior analysis. What's that you say? Positive behavior support. What's that you say? ABA is all the rave. PBS works just as great. You decide which you will use to put some order back in your school.
Good evening. I'm Tracy Arnold, and I will be your mediator for tonight, and you are watching SPCE 619. Americans have recently been very concerned about the connection between applied behavior analysis and school-wide positive behavior support. Tonight, we will be talking about how applied behavior analysis and positive behavior support are loosely connected. To better understand this topic, we will talk with Rachel Gruler, who is a board-certified behavior analysis from New York, as well as Katie Pearson, a classroom teacher from Alabama, who is trained in and utilizes positive behavior support. Finally, for a perspective from Amber Powell, a parent advocate from South Carolina on our show. We're going to start with the classroom teacher, Katie. What is positive behavior support?
Good evening, Tracy. School-wide positive behavior support is more simply referred to as PBS, or positive behavior support, and that's how I'll refer to it throughout the rest of the debate. It's a proactive framework that includes defining, teaching, and supporting appropriate student behaviors in the school environment. It's designed to be put into place to prevent behavior problems from actually developing. A continuum of positive behavior support for all students within the school is implemented both in the classroom and in non-classroom settings, for example, hallway, buses, cafeteria, restrooms, and so forth. According to Horner and Sugai, two themes that define positive behavior support are a focus on the whole school as a unit of intervention and the simultaneous development of interventions tied to at least 3 tiers of support intensity. Okay, these 3 tiers are Tier 1, where everyone's involved, it's school-wide intervention. Tier 2 is targeted at smaller groups, so just some of the people. And Tier 3 is individualized. You can kind of think of it like a stoplight. The green section, everything's a go, everyone's involved. Tier 2 is yellow because that's when you slow down, take a look at the smaller groups who may not be jumping on board with the PBS model. And Tier 3 is red because that's when it's time to stop and address the specific behavior of an individual who is failing to comply with the system that's been put into place. And perhaps this is where ABA would actually come in. Basically, the overall goal of positive behavior support is to improve the quality of life, not only for the child, but for all the individuals within the child social network.
Thank you, Katie, for that explanation and the visual reference. Now, Rachel, what is applied behavior analysis?
Good question, Tracy. I am asked this question quite frequently, honestly. According to Bear, Wolf, and Riesling, applied behavior analysis is the process of systematically applying interventions based upon the principles of learning theory to improve socially significant behaviors to a meaningful degree, and to demonstrate that the interventions employed are responsible for the improvement in behavior. So to put this simply, ABA is using scientifically based evidence to teach individuals basic behavioral principles in which they will learn to communicate effectively. ABA should be used in a variety of settings, such as the school, the home, and the community. A variety of interventions are used to improve behaviors and communication for individuals. So ABA, it begins with observing the child through a comprehensive assessment, which allows the professional to know the learner's current skills and needs. This allows the professional to also understand what function is maintaining the behavior. Once the behavior is selected, which is what we know as a target behavior, it is then defined in clear and observable terms. Then programming and interventions would be selected according to the child's skill set. The overall goal of ABA is to teach learners how to learn within various environments and how to act in ways that will consistently produce positive outcomes for the learner and those around him or her. Although it is largely used within the special needs realm, it can be adapted to any individual regardless of their diagnosis.
Thank you, Rachel. Now that we know what ABA and PBS are, Katie, can you tell us a little bit about what positive behavior support looks like?
Certainly. In a school where positive behavior framework is being used, at least 80% or more of the students can tell you what is expected of them and actually give you an example, a behavioral example, because they have been taught the appropriate behavior. They've been actively supervised while exhibiting this behavior. They've practiced the behavior, and they have been acknowledged for successfully reaching specific behavior goals. Positive adult to student interactions exceed negative interactions. For example, you'll hear more student-teacher interaction like, I like how you're walking in a straight line, instead of stop getting out of the line. Data and team-based action planning and implementation are operating at all times. Administrators are active participants, and the students are well aware of this, and they keep them involved. And like I said earlier, there is a full continuum of behavior support always available to all the students. I have a video here from a school that uses the PBS model. It's a tool they use to train and remind kids of the bathroom expectations for their school.
My school is a very fine school. My school.
Mark Twain expectations.
Bathrooms!
Did you ever go into a bathroom that was really gross?
Yeah?
Did you want to use it?
No!
Here's how to behave in a bathroom. Follow MTS.
And use good manners!
When we go into a bathroom at Mark Twain, we wait our turn.
Only 3 students are allowed in the bathroom. We wait patiently in the hall till the bathroom is free for us to use.
If someone has a pass, they can go right in.
We respect others' privacy.
We knock to see if the stall is occupied.
When we go into a bathroom at Mark Twain, we keep it clean.
We throw used paper towels in the garbage and clean up after ourselves.
We use our quiet voice.
We speak softly so we don't disturb the classrooms.
T, think and learn.
At Mark Twain, we think too.
Think too.
We finish in a bathroom in 2 minutes.
Think too.
We use 2 pumps of soap.
Think too.
We use 2 paper towels.
Think too.
We score 2 points into the trash can.
S, be safe.
We use soap.
We scrub our hands, especially our fingers, long enough to sing happy birthday to ourselves.
Birthday to me. Happy birthday to me.
We keep the water in the sink.
So no one slips and falls.
We keep our feet on the ground.
We keep our hands, feet, and objects to ourselves.
If you follow these expectations every time you go to a bathroom or water fountain, use good manners, think and learn, and be safe, then you'll have earned the right to say,
We are proud. We are Tri-Steamers.
Thanks, Katie, for that training video of PBS. Rachel, how about you? Do you have a video of what ABA would look like?
I do, Tracy. So to give everybody kind of a clear, simple understanding of what ABA is like, I provided a brief 2-minute video of a therapist running a session with a learner.
What are we working for? M&M's. Say I. M&M's. All right. Drew, touch. Look at me. Good boy. Look at my eyes. 1, 2, Where? Touch something that you eat. Oh, good touch. Good. What do you eat? You eat? Cookies. Good job. Drew, show me drinking. What are you doing? Say, I'm drinking. What are you doing? I'm drinking. Good job. Show me eating. What are you doing? You are eating. Good job. Oh, you do. Let's count them.
1, 2, 3, 4,
4,
5.
5. Can I have? Oh, you found the only Skittle. Good job. There you go.
Now that we have heard a little bit about PBS and ABA and seen what they look like in action, let's talk more about what is involved in each of these. Katie, tell us your perspective on training in the school setting.
Okay. As a classroom teacher, one of the last things you want to hear is that there's a new strategy and it's time to go sit through a long professional development training. But we were in a bind at our school at this time. We were having difficulty trying to keep everyone on the same page with expectations, building expectations, and it became a problem, and behavior problems started to develop. So our school administrators decided they wanted to implement positive behavior support. So they developed a behavior leadership team, which included an administrator, a gen ed classroom teacher, that was me, a special education teacher, an activity teacher, which is like the art teacher, the librarian, so forth, a parent who had a child in the school, and a community member who did not have a child in the school. The first thing we did was we went to visit a school in our state who was utilizing the PBS framework. And just being in that school was a very positive experience. I've actually provided, let's see, I've got the training matrix that they have that's posted in their school. And this gives you an idea of how to the point positive behavior support really is. Their matrix involves specifics for hallways, playgrounds, cafeterias, so forth. Here's what they should be doing. But there's no wiggle room because they also have a category for all settings here to make sure that everybody is clear about the expectations. Every parent and child receives this document at the beginning of the year, and it is posted throughout the school for everyone to see at all times. Also, it's written completely in imperative sentences, which are demands. They're not suggestions. So there should be no doubt as to what is expected of those kids who are involved with this training matrix. After we went to that school, we were able to attend a conference to become certified positive behavior support trainers within our building. And that prepared us to be able to work with our faculty and staff to come up with our own positive behavior support plan to implement during the coming school year. It was a long process, took all of our professional development days before school started, but it was very worth it. It was tedious, but we started seeing the results, and we knew it was worth it.
Thank you, Katie. The visual document will help our viewers better understand. Rachel, what do you think of Katie's comment?
Tracy, I feel that all too often this is the response from teachers. When you ask a school to implement something so complex, you're kind of just asking them to take time out of their own schedules to learn the proper procedures. Of course, this becomes time consuming and also costly. Through ABA, though, individuals are trained properly within the context of their own schedule so that they can understand the principles better of how to implement ABA. The supervisor, a BCBA, comes each week to oversee and train the therapist implementing the program for the given child. Parent training is also a component of ABA, and since ABA is so complex and the training is rather intense and rigorous, as a BCBA, schooling is mandatory, as well as accredited recognition from the board, the BACB board, which adheres to strict guidelines. Now, from my understanding of PBS, a coach is provided who is briefly taught the intervention methods being utilized in the school system.
Katie, can you confirm what Rachel has recently mentioned about the training from PBS?
From my experience, I can confirm that within the school setting, there can be someone who holds the title of what we call an academic coach. They have administrator credentials. At least in our district, they had to have that to be that coach. This person was actually on the team as the administrator, even though she wasn't the principal or the assistant principal of the school. She was our coach. She, as well as the other 5 of the team, were trained through the conference, but since the remainder of us on the team are not always available for support, then the academic coach is first to respond. And if a new strategy or something comes along that we want to implement, she's usually the first to find out about it and get everything going in the direction that that she thinks is best for our school. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, it makes sense. Thank you. Katie, would you say that you could properly implement all aspects of, say, a functional behavior assessment had you not had the proper training through schooling and work in the field of applied behavior analysis?
No. There's no possible way I could implement all the aspects of an FBA. I didn't even know what an FBA was before I began my quest for my master's degree. And so this is where I feel like there's a huge gap between positive behavior support and applied behavior analysis. I feel like it's within the terminology. I mean, I had plenty of experience with behavior intervention plans, individualized education plans, students with unruly behavior and such, but never realized there was a connection with an entirely different field of study. Even further, I feel though I was trained in positive behavior support, but nowhere was there ever a mention of finding the function of the behavior until Tier 3, which points directly to ABA. So that's kind of where the confusion or the possible connection comes in for me.
Thank you, Katie. Rachel, does this clarify some questions that you have for Katie?
It does, Tracy, and thank you for the confirmation, Katie. Although I am a major advocate for ABA, I do believe that the driving force and idea behind PBS can be and is connected to ABA. In fact, an article published by Takani confirmed that PBS is simply a unique application of ABA. Both ABA and PBS aim to teach social skills, increase desired behaviors, decrease problem behaviors, and both are proactive strategies.
All right, let's turn to our parent advocate. Amber, what are your thoughts on this topic of training?
As a parent advocate, I would like to let parents know how they can also be trained on these 2 methods. ABA is known for being able to be trained in the home, and ABA teams are able to get in the homes to also train parents and other family members, like siblings, on the ABA strategies that are used on their child. PBS seems to be only directed in schools, even though they are loosely connected, and both are trying to decrease and increase particular behaviors and use positive reinforcement. How can you train this to parents outside of the classroom?
That's a great question, Amber. Katie, do you have any advice for this parent advocate?
Certainly. Parents should be able to be trained for official positive behavior support throughout the public school system. Schools are required by law to have parental involvement in education meetings and offer access to information about what may be in place within the school. I'm sure that differs for every district, though. I was blessed to get to teach in a 5-6 middle school in a district with very high parental involvement. Therefore, we had many parent nights where we offered options for parents to spend time in the school, learning about programs and procedures that were used within the school in our building, and even parenting ideas, and brought in people from the community and so forth. Like I said, though, Amber, I'm not sure how every school complies with the mandates about parental involvement in education, but most parents probably already know how to use positive behavior support. They just don't realize it. Some parents use chore charts or have systems in place that keep track of how their kids perform tasks at home. If a child gets a reward at some point for completing a task, that's positive behavior support. If a child's recognized for following the rules or just doing something nice or out of the ordinary or so forth, that's positive behavior support. It doesn't have to be a huge group of people to be considered PBS. It can be for one child or your children at home. You just have to come up with a plan, and you've got to stick to it.
Rachel, with your experience and knowledge as a BCBA, could you pinpoint any ethical issues when it comes to proper training?
I can, Tracy. So my major concern would be with the general policy to do no harm. With do no harm, it's kind of a broad point, but it does encompass the proper implementation of data taking. And it also involves what I would consider the code 1.02, which might not mean anything to anybody, but I do just feel that it's important to kind of put that out there and talk about the codes themselves. This code kind of talks about teaching out of your area of expertise. These two components could be overlooked very easily without the proper training. And as a BCBA myself, I would be concerned when working within the school system and not having everybody equally trained and providing for children that do fall within their area of expertise.
Thank you. Those are some great issues to keep in mind. Now let's talk about the funding behind positive behavior support and ABA. Rachel, we're going to stick with you. I'll let you take the lead and tell us how you feel about federal funding.
Oh, Tracy, so this is such a sore subject for the field of ABA. As a BCBA, again, I've had several families reach out to me concerning funding. One of the major complaints is that they were being turned away from agencies due to their insurance. Quite honestly, I'm a little bit baffled by this, but I do know that there is help out there. Medicaid waivers do exist. You kind of have to put some time into them. They are lengthy, they're drawn out, but there is help out there. I truly wish that the government would remove their blinders concerning this fact and make it easier on the parents. ABA is a sound intervention for individuals, so it really needs to be utilized. A lot of research has been conducted over the years to prove the fact of its effectiveness. I think it is time that we take a stand and force the government to fund ABA therapy for all individuals. If they can do it through the school system, which, as we have noted, lacks training and proper expertise, they should be able to do it at all levels.
Amber, as a parent advocate, would you agree with Rachel's statement? Have you had parents express the same concerns to you?
Yes, Tracy, I would agree. I have seen many clients turned away due to having Medicaid, and also if their insurance reimbursement rates weren't very high. Certain insurances aren't covered by ABA, especially in South Carolina. ABA should be available for all children in order to have the opportunity to live a functioning life. In South Carolina right now, there's a huge issue with Medicaid rates, and a lot of the companies are closing down because of this. So there are no providers for these children, and this is leaving 3,000 kids on the waiting list, and also ABA therapists without jobs. As a parent, I would want what is best for my child. I've seen parents move states or get new jobs in order to get insurance for their kids, or to be able to receive services at all. I also have seen that the school system may provide services for children, but they are still not getting the full hours that ABA would cover. ABA normally covers up to 40 with insurance or Medicaid, and in the school I've seen it only covers about 3 or 4 hours a week. Also, I've seen the school that they do things a lot differently. Some of the ABA and PBS plans that are in place are group related, so the child doesn't get that one-on-one service that they need.
Thank you, Amber. Rachel, do you have a rebuttal to Amber's comment?
I do, in fact. So great point, Amber. I feel that this is a huge concern for children within the PBS setting. A small percent, about 5 to 7% to be exact, fall into this tier 3 category that we speak about. As Katie stated, and she showed within her visual, tier 3 is the more severe behavioral children who require the more individualized attention. So regardless of the percentage, all children should be accounted for. ABA is individualized. Our ethical code states that programming should be addressed according to the individual's needs or wants. Children who display major disruptive behavior may not benefit as well from PBS. This child would require a more intense type of treatment, and this is where ABA comes into play. So if funding is not available, nor is insurance, that child simply becomes lost within the system. This is really a huge concern.
Katie, do you have anything to add on the topic of funding?
Yeah, I can't really say anything negative about funding for positive behavior support. Within the public education system, there are usually ways to find money to spend on specific trainings. For example, the Department of Education for most states recommends that local education agents or LEAs, they use their Individuals with Disabilities Education Act recovery funds for intensive district-wide professional development in school-wide positive behavioral supports. Wow, that's a lot of words. They're also advised to use stimulus funds like state school stabilization funds to implement positive behavior support under many different federal provisions since it's mandated. Following all of that, there's still federal money within the public education system that helps districts maintain the positive behavior support training and implementation. This varies per school. It could be if you're a Title I school or whatever, wherever your school, what category they fall in. But I mean, if we didn't have the funding, my team would not have been able to visit the school or be trained to be leaders for our school. And I know right now over 23,000 schools are using the PBS framework. But I'm pretty sure a lot of schools don't utilize their federal money as it's intended to be used. So there are probably many school systems who could really benefit from positive behavior support training and implementation, but it's just not happening. And I think that's really unfortunate.
With the information we have discussed, it seems that positive behavior support has a major federal backing. Rachel, would you like to conclude out this topic for us tonight?
Thank you, Tracy. From my understanding, according to an article published by Putnam and Kincaid in 2015, the Individuals with Disabilities Education Act mandated that an FBA must be conducted when implementing school-wide positive behavior supports. As a BCBA, I think this idea is wonderful. Completing a full FBA is a key component to ABA. It allows the profession to truly understand the function of the behavior. However, this brings me back to the argument about training. As Katie mentioned, without a prior education in ABA, she would not have been able to properly implement an FBA, which is now legally mandated.
And do you, as the BCBA, what ethical issues do you see regarding this topic?
Wow, Tracy, so my last statement pretty much covers my main concern. The concern, again, I'm going to throw out a code. I know, again, it doesn't mean much to you guys, but code 3.01 that states that a BCBA must implement an FBA prior to implementing program. If ABA does not follow the same federal mandate as a school system, there could potentially be a major problem ethically.
Thank you, Rachel. For our last and final topic tonight, we will be discussing the research that goes into both applied behavior analysis and positive behavior support. Rachel, how do you feel research impacts applied behavior analysis?
So Tracy, research is the driving force behind ABA. Without research, ABA would not be what it is. It would not be possible. Skinner was the founding father for ABA. It's kind of a shame to let him down right now. He put so much work into this, along as other colleagues. So where PBS is viewed as more of a treatment, ABA is based solely on research findings. A lot of what PBS has done is based upon ABA literature. Both ABA and PBS focus on antecedent events. However, PBS lacks consequence events. I'm going to share a little visual with you guys real quick that kind of lets you see what an ABC looks like, what we call antecedent, behavior, and consequence, it's going to share with you kind of what that is. So here we have our antecedent, which is the event or interactions that happen before the behavior occurs. Then we have our behavior. The behavior is exactly what we say. It's what we call our target behavior. It's what it looks like. You observe it. And then we have our consequence, the events or interactions which happen after the behavior. So as we talked about, this kind of just isn't getting followed, the consequence parts side. And that's really a major concern with that. So it analyzes the antecedent, as we talked about, the behavior and the consequence. According to Johnson, Fox, Jacobson, Green, and Mullick, the lack of consequence events is due to the complexity of research as far as school-wide positive behavior sports is concerned. Research is very involved. It is not for the faint of heart. The same article that I quoted above also made note that SWPBS lacks any new questions or findings that would further the advancement of research. So if there is such a lack of information and or questions, how could you possibly find credibility in PBS's research?
Katie, does the research differ between PBS and ABA?
PBS is definitely, it's not as detail oriented as ABA, that's for sure. According to the same article that Rachel just referenced, PBS focuses more on values which are based on respect for the individual, meaningful outcomes, social validation, dignity, normalization, inclusion, person-centered planning, and self-determination. I think the risk with this would be that in PBS, we focus more on cultural values opposed to true research findings. However, since it's mostly based on the whole group, then that only allows us to have data for group-oriented studies and less individualized results, of course, depending on their tier of intervention. And PBS involves more constant reinforcement, and that doesn't always seem to be the case with ABA.
Amber, what is your concerns or opinions on the differences of research between applied behavior analysis and PBS?
This is where I'm concerned for parents. Since PBS mostly is based for a whole group, it raises concerns to parents because their child isn't getting that one-on-one attention. Or if their child isn't quite on the level of another child in the class, they also are concerned because they might not reach that goal in the class for PBS. So if the PBS has a goal where you reach a certain amount of tokens and you can make it to a pizza party, some parents are concerned that their child's behaviors are too problematic to get to that place. In ABA, on the other hand, it's individualized for each child to have a plan implemented for them specifically, and they are reinforced daily on specific goals for that child.
Okay, we have heard a lot of great information and seen a lot of great visual references from our panel tonight. Now we have time for a few questions from the audience. First question that comes up is, how do we address the students who fall in the Tier 3 category? Do we feel that their needs are being met accordingly? With limited training for PBS, do you feel that this is the best placement for them, or do you feel that they would benefit from a more individualized treatment such as ABA? Who wants to take this question?
So I'll go ahead and take this question. So I kind of talked about this, about the Tier 3 category. So within Tier 3, this is again where we find the more problematic behaviors. These children need more individualization. In ABA, this is where individualization comes into play. ABA is based upon your individual needs. This is where I talked about do no harm as part of the ethical code. Within ABA, we're going to make sure that each child's needs and wants are addressed accordingly to their programming. We're going to observe them. We're going to use the ABC chart. We're going to go ahead and see what the antecedent is. What is the behavior? What is the consequence that comes into play? So in PBS, I do not feel that their needs are being met accordingly. Within ABA, I feel that they would be met accordingly. They would benefit. They would have a successful outcome. This isn't to say that there is anything wrong with PBS. This is just, again, talking about the tier 3 category. People placed within the tier 1 and the tier 2, individuals and students and learners within that, they can benefit greatly. This is just mainly meant for children who fall into the tier 3 category. I just want to make sure that that is heard loud and clear. Thank you, Tracy. I'm handing it back over.
Thank you, Rachel. All right, our second question from our viewers is, positive behavior support or ABA something that can be taken from the classroom setting and implemented in the home setting easily? Amber, will you take this one?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and take this one. Both Katie and Rachel discussed earlier that training can be done in the home for both ABA, or training can be done in the home for ABA, and then parents can also come into school for PBS training. Katie did mention that schools that she's worked in the past have had parents come in for nightly parent nights, weekly parent nights, or monthly, whatever they have available, and they can learn what they are teaching the children in their setting at school.
All right, our third question of the night. What recommendations would you have for a board-certified behavior analysis consulting with the school to support or help with implementation of school-wide positive behavior support? Who would like to take this question?
I guess I can take this one. Having been in the school setting and know what it's like to have someone of authority or whatever come in and try to tell you it's time to do something differently, you just got to approach with a very gentle touch, understanding that there are going to be teachers within the district or the building probably that have been there forever, and they do not like change. And I'm really thinking about this from having been in the building, in the classroom environment, and now moving to hopefully, being a BCBA and going into the schools. And I just know that you would have to be cautious and understanding, and don't run in there like the boss and say, here's how it's going to be done. I think just like with positive behavior support is, go in with a very positive approach, and hopefully provide plenty of examples of what's about to happen, and hopefully the majority of people will end up being on your side.